Traveling through the three kingdoms, Zhang Tingzhi began as a pawn under Cao Cao's command. At the Battle of Red Cliffs, Cao's army was about to be defeated, and Zhang Tingzhi approached Cao with a divine plan. Successfully avoided the defeat of Cao's army in Red Cliff. From then on, Zhang Tingzhi completely established himself in the Cao army camp. Cao Cao. Military Master. I want to eliminate that Jiangdong rat generation. Do military commanders have good strategies? Zhang Tingzhi. I do have a clever plan, Cao Cao. Alright, tomorrow we will send our troops south to eliminate the Jiangdong rat generation. Zhang Tingzhi. Prime Minister, don't worry, worryFeilu novel network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Crisis in the Three Kingdoms Era. You are listening at novel full.audio. When a person sits at home, disaster comes from heaven. Zhang Tingzhi, who was originally playing with his fruit phone at home that day, unexpectedly experienced an explosion while charging his fruit phone. This explosion also directly hit him in the Three Kingdoms, which is indeed the Three Kingdoms. After crossing over, he also became a soldier under Cao Cao's command in the 13th year of Jianan. That's right, Zhang Tingzhi is currently on a warship in Chibi. Now he still has Cao Cao, who dreams of unifying the world in his camp, and over 200,000 Cao soldiers, all of whom will soon become victims of this war. And this classic battle, which has been passed down in later generations, saw Cao Cao's army of over 200,000 soldiers, but only tens of thousands of them managed to flee in embarrassment. At the same time, it also established the situation of the Three Kingdoms, completely shattering Cao Cao's dream of unifying the world. At present, on the battleship in Chibi, the only thing Zhang Tingzhi can rely on is himself, not to mention a rusted iron sword and a bow and arrow in the cabin. Zhang Tingzhi picked up the rusty iron sword, feeling a bit tearless. What is this supposed to be? Even if you want to travel through time, why don't you just pass me through to Sun Quan and Liu Bei's side? What is it like to be here with Cao Cao? Is it to let him witness the countdown to his own death with his own eyes? This thief clearly wants to die on his own, can't he just order it? Zhang Tingzhi complained from the bottom of his heart for a long time, and now his mind has almost fused with the original owner's memory. The person who was pierced by his soul is also called Zhang Tingzhi. He is just 17 years old this year and grew up eating from 100 families in the village after his parents died at a young age. At the age of 15, as soon as he left the village, he was caught and joined the army. And this time coming from the Central Plains to Chibi was also his first time following him down to Jiangnan. Now that the Battle of Red Cliffs is about to begin, how can he survive as an insignificant soldier? Zhang Tingzhi's brain was running at high speed, and soon his eyes lit up. Don't say he really came up with a solution. That's running away. The Battle of Red Cliffs will only start in a few days. I need to run away quickly. Zhang Tingzhi thought of this and immediately turned around, picked up the iron sword beside him, and walked directly towards the outside of the cabin. However, as soon as he walked out, he suddenly gave up this idea. Because now is the period of the Three Kingdoms, when people eat and don't spit their bones. Even if he really escapes, he will encounter any bandits along the way, and his fate will be even worse. Even if he was lucky enough not to encounter bandits and eventually went into seclusion in the mountains and became an ordinary citizen, he would probably have to commute back and forth all day to make a living. And as a great young man of the 21st century, he finally arrived in the Three Kingdoms. Do he still have to go farming? I have planted land for a lifetime in my past life, can't I still enjoy it here? After weighing for a while, Zhang Tingzhi decided to take a risk to remind Cao Cao that he couldn't run away after all, and now he had to take a risk. But as soon as he made up his mind, he encountered the first headache problem. If you go to see Cao Cao, then you must first know where Cao Cao's camp is. Zhang Tingzhi is just a small soldier, so not to mention him, even at the level of Wu Chang and Shi Chang, he has no right to know the location of Cao Cao's camp. At this moment, a strong man passed by in front of him, and this person was Su Chu. Zhang Tingzhi's eyes lit up, and now his situation was beyond his control. If it really doesn't work, he can follow, that's right. He can track Su Chu. At this moment, Su Chu was patrolling the barracks in front, and Zhang Tingzhi quietly followed behind Su Chu. Until it was discovered that Su Chu had entered a very large tent, and the surrounding defense was also very tight, directly 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. Zhang Tingzhi wisely stopped outside the tent, which was almost always Cao Cao's tent. But how to get in has become another challenge. If you dare to break through forcefully, it will definitely be blood splattered on the spot, and you will be cut to pieces. But if there is a legitimate reason, then it must be a different story. I remember in my past life, when my boss gave me some tasks that I didn't want to do at work, I didn't just get by with legitimate reasons. Zhang Tingzhi swaggered to the front of the Chinese army camp, but before he could approach, the guards guarding the outer gate raised their spears directly at Zhang Tingzhi and shouted, "Those who dare to approach the Prime Minister's tent will die. Today he will definitely see Cao Cao." If I remember correctly, Cao Cao has probably received a letter of surrender from Huang, so he is happily replying to his letter. And he didn't know the specific time of the Battle of Red Cliffs, but it should have started soon. Once Cao Cao believed that he had the chance to win on his side, he would definitely accept Huang's surrender. By then, everything would be too late. At this moment, Su Chu swaggered out of the camp. Zhang Tingzhi looked at Su Chu in the distance, and he vaguely remembered that Su Chu seemed to be from Qiao County. Then a plan took root and sprouted in his heart. Zhang Tingzhi waved his hand at Su Chu and loudly called out, "General Su, General Su Chu." Su Chu, who had just been scolded by Cao Cao inside, walked out and found a soldier calling him in front of him. Seeing this, he was puzzled and walked towards Zhang Tingzhi, looking at him. He couldn't help but ask, "What's up with finding me?" Chapter 2. Our Cao army will soon be destroyed. You are listening at novelfull.audio. General Su, don't you know me anymore? A few years ago, we were defending our hometown together in Jipo, Runan. It was me, Xiao Zhang. Don't you really remember? I remember you even patted my shoulder and said you would definitely lead us out of the encirclement. Zhang Tingzhi pretended to be aggrieved. Ah, what? You? Me? Su Chu frowned upon hearing this. You should know that he has been away from Runan for a long time, so many details have long been forgotten. However, this person's face is somewhat familiar to him, but he really can't remember where he has seen him. By the way, General Su hasn't seen his sister.in.law for a long time. A few days ago, I heard someone say that he has a sister.in.law, but I don't know how his sister.in.law has been lately. Zhang Tingzhi hugged Su Chu's shoulder with familiarity and walked towards the camp. Su Chu looked at the familiar face in front of him, and then learned about the situation in Runan. He also let go of his guard and instinctively replied, Your sister.in.law's health is okay. General Su, I know a nourishing secret recipe. Why don't I have my sister.in.law try it another day?" Then the two of them arrived at Cao Cao's tent. As soon as Zhang Tingzhi arrived inside the tent, several gazes quickly fell on him. Zhang Tingzhi appeared calm on the surface, but he was already in a state of panic inside. Seeing the person sitting on the handsome chair at the top with thin eyes, long beards, and a resolute and imposing face, I believe this person should be the Prime Minister Cao Cao, while the person standing next to me, dressed in a green robe and a Confucian scholar, must be Sun Yu. As for the rest, there are a group of generals wearing armor on their shoulders. At this moment, a look of surprise appeared in everyone's eyes, as they looked at the soldier brought in by Su Chu, feeling somewhat puzzled. Upon seeing this, Cao Cao first spoke up and asked, "Su Chu, what do you mean by this?" In the next second, Su Chu also regained his senses, his eyes couldn't help but chill, and he reached out and suddenly drew his sword. Seeing this situation, everyone froze in place. Sun Yu instinctively stood in front of Cao Cao and scolded, "Su Chu, are you crazy?" Zhang Tingzhi was also stunned by this scene. Isn't Su Chu the most loyal subordinate of Cao Cao? Why do we have to draw our swords to rebel? The plot clearly doesn't go that way. But in the next moment, the sword in Su Chu's hand fell on Zhang Tingzhi's shoulder, and behind him came Su Chu's cold voice. "You kid tried your best to trick me into entering the Prime Minister's camp. I don't know what your intentions were. Hurry up and truthfully recruit me, and I can still keep you dead." At this moment, Su Chu had already reacted and his heart was filled with murderous intent. Zhang Tingzhi felt the chill of the iron sword on his shoulder, and his face turned a bit pale. He cursed inwardly, the sleeping trough was careless. Su Chu's brain is really quick. "Prime Minister, I have no choice but to report 100,000 urgent matters to you." Zhang Tingzhi looked at Cao Cao in the main position. Now Cao Cao is his only life-saving straw. "You thief actually wants to argue. Prime Minister, don't believe him. I'll just cut off his head." Su Chu shouted angrily upon hearing this, and then he was about to take action. Meanwhile, Sun Yu, who had been silent all along, suddenly spoke up and said, "Wait a moment." The sword in Su Chu's hand stopped 1 centimeter from Zhang Tingzhi's neck in the next second. It is not an exaggeration to say that apart from the Prime Minister, the only one among the 3 armies who can make Su Chu show mercy is probably Sun Yu, because Su Chu admires Sun Yu from the bottom of his heart. Su Chu may not give face to others, but Su Chu will still give it. "I remember you were a soldier of the Navy Divine Machine Camp, right? If there's anything I can report to your captain, why did you come to find the Prime Minister?" Sun Yu saw the armor of the Cao army on Zhang Tingzhi's body and vaguely felt that there was something fishy about this matter. Zhang Tingzhi's gaze was firm and he said, "Only the Prime Minister can make a decision on this matter." Cao Cao, who was sitting in the main seat, stared at Zhang Tingzhi and suddenly smiled, then spoke out and asked, "What's up with you? Now I have agreed to let you know." Zhang Tingzhi swallowed a mouthful of saliva and then looked at Su Chu, who then withdrew his sword from his hand. However, Su Chu still stood beside Zhang Tingzhi, as if a fierce tiger could pounce at any time. Zhang Tingzhi's back was soaked in cold sweat, and he almost went straight just now. "Prime Minister. Our Cao army is about to be destroyed, so I hope the Prime Minister can make plans early," Zhang Tingzhi said with a serious expression and a very respectful tone. His catastrophic words were simply astonishing. For a moment, everyone was stunned in place. Now the Cao army can be said to be the strongest in the world. As for the so-called Sun Lu alliance, it seems like a group of clowns warming each other. The Prime Minister has just pacified the north, and now the morale is strong. As long as we work hard to eliminate the so-called Sun Lu alliance, we can completely unify the world. What do you mean by this? Cao Cao's gaze fell on Zhang Tingzhi, and he also asked with great interest in his eyes. Zhang Tingzhi sorted out his emotions and then spoke up, "I guess Huang Gai is probably discussing the surrender with the Prime Minister, so I came here to persuade him not to trust this person lightly." His words startled everyone present, and Cao Cao's face instantly changed. This matter has just been agreed upon, which is to accept Huang Gai's surrender and reply with a letter asking him to surrender 3 days later at night with his 5,000 subordinates. The Prime Minister ordered that no news be revealed at this time, and the generals in the camp had just learned about it. How did this person in front of him learn about it? Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 3. Now there is only one way to withdraw troops. You are listening at novel full.audio. However, Cao Cao's face remained expressionless, and his eyes narrowed slightly as he said, "What kind of waves can this yellow lid flip over? It's just a simple Huang Gai. As long as he enters Chaomengda's place, it's just a plaything in his own hands. Besides, he has studied the internal affairs of Eastern Wu, and Sun Quan's political views are not consistent with Huang Gai's, and it's not been a day or two. Now that a big war is imminent, Sun Quan will scold the old officials of the two dynasties like this, and Huang Gai's surrender is also expected. I think Huang Gai's move is a false surrender. He will lay straw and fish oil on those ships in advance on the day of surrender. After we relax our vigilance, they will light dozens of gunboats ahead of time, and they will collide with us directly. Then with a single fire, our 200,000 Cao army will be gone. Zhang Tingzhi said firmly in his tone. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone present had a strange expression on their faces. Want a fire attack? But how did you learn about these things? Upon hearing this, Cao Cao's mouth curved slightly and asked Zhang Tingzhi in return. This is already a matter of sealed coffins and has been passed down for thousands of years in future generations. Zhang Tingzhi replied, I usually like to speculate on military matters. A few days ago, I heard that Huang Gai was severely punished for a small mistake, and I thought this matter was a bit strange. So I thought more about this aspect. Today, I just had some ideas, so I came directly to report to the Prime Minister. Upon hearing this, Cao Cao was also greatly surprised. The person in front of him could directly infer so many possibilities based solely on the incident of Huang Gai being beaten. He had a well-thought-out approach and risked his life to advise him. With such talent and loyalty to himself, such a person should not be subordinate to ordinary soldiers. When Cao Cao thought of this, he also had a love for talent. By the way, I haven't asked what your name is yet. Cao Cao cast an appreciative look at Zhang Tingzhi and then asked with a smile. Zhang Tingzhi. Zhang Tingzhi respectfully said. Upon hearing this, Cao Cao nodded and said, I remember your name. I'll wait until I get promoted to 3 levels when I go back. Alright, it's none of your business. You go back first. Zhang Tingzhi was stunned when he heard these words. Why didn't he follow the script? Why are you so calm when you are about to suffer a major disaster? Sun Yu saw the confusion on Zhang Ting's face and couldn't help but look at Cao Cao. When he saw Cao Cao nod, he spoke up and said, Young brother, you can only speculate to this extent based on the matter of Huang Gai. The future is definitely limitless. But you should know that if you want to use fire attack, you must take advantage of the situation. Our army is upstream now, and it is currently in the deep winter season. The wind on the river has always been northwest, so it's good if they don't guard us from using fire attack. If Zhou Yu really wants fire attack, then he will only steal chickens and not eat rice, and in the end, he will burn himself. That's right. The Prime Minister had already considered the issue of the enemy using fire when he ordered the iron rope to connect the boats earlier. What a clever plan the Prime Minister has. How could he have made such a low-level mistake? You don't have to worry about this matter. I don't think we can casually doubt Huang Gai's loyalty. Otherwise, how can we recruit talented soldiers? If we just rely on speculation to hastily doubt, wouldn't it chill the soldiers' hearts in the future? But my little brother is so thoughtful, I wonder if he would like to come to my account and be a front-line staff officer. At this time, many people in the camp saw Cao Cao's acquiescence and also began to agree with Sun Yu. Upon seeing this, Cao Cao nodded in satisfaction. When he ordered the iron rope boat to be connected, he had also specifically considered Zhou Yu's strategy of using fire attack, and even hired a dedicated person to observe the celestial phenomena. Every day, the wind direction was measured, and for several months it was a northwest wind, so how could it suddenly turn into an east wind? If there is a sudden change in the east wind, he will definitely be able to anticipate it in the first place and prepare early. What if there is a sudden east wind when the time comes? Zhang Tingzhi said without giving up. In his past life, Zhang Tingzhi of the Three Kingdoms believed that Cao Cao's biggest mistake was using iron ropes to connect boats, without considering the method of fire attack, which led to the disastrous defeat of the Battle of Red Cliffs. How could Cao Cao not have been prepared in advance for such an obvious loophole now? Ultimately, it was oneself who underestimated Cao Cao. In fact, Cao Cao was not defeated by Zhou Yu and Zhuge Liang in the Battle of Red Cliffs, but lost to the heavens. Upon hearing this, Cao Cao's face darkened and he asked in a low voice, "How would you handle this matter in your opinion?" "The whole army must immediately withdraw." Zhang Tingzhi looked at Cao Cao with sincere eyes and spoke cautiously. "Who and what are you?" "Never, Prime Minister. The Prime Minister can carry on the ambition of Haoyu, and the Marquis can be controlled. Seeing that the prosperous era of the Han dynasty can be created again, how can we easily withdraw our troops at this time? I cannot agree to it at all." At this moment, everyone present was shocked by Zhang Tingzhi's bold words and began to advise. This young brother's withdrawal of troops cannot be casually said. After all, do you know how much the Prime Minister has prepared for this war? Sun Yu also frowned and asked in response. Zhang Tingzhi's eyes were sincere, and his tone was unquestionable as he said, "Now there is only one way to withdraw troops." In fact, he still wanted to give it a final try in his heart. At this time, he would retreat and defend his city well. After a year or two, they would completely conquer Jingzhou. After training the navy, it would definitely be best to start a war again. And this is also Cao Cao's only chance, and also his only chance to survive. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. What are you still doing here in the 4th chapter? Hurry up and lead the way. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If this move cannot be successful, then he will have to flee to the end of the world. At this moment, Cao Cao's face had turned pale with iron. Just now, he no longer cared about this person's recklessness, and even promoted him to a 3rd level. I didn't expect this person to be so ungrateful. You know, when he went out to fight in the south and north, he didn't know where he was feeding. With a little bit of cleverness, how dare you not even consider yourself now? Cao Cao's face became increasingly ugly as he thought of this, and he sternly said, "How could the 2 armies disturb the morale of the army and pull me out to beat the 10 army staff, and then put me in death row? After the Prime Minister takes down Sun and Lu, he will directly slaughter this officer's sacrificial flag. I hope the Prime Minister won't regret it in 3 days." Zhang Tingzhi suppressed his anger and looked at Cao Cao with anger on his face, then gritted his teeth word by word. "Although I already knew about Cao Cao's stubborn nature, I am still extremely angry at the moment. After all, the pros and cons of the situation have already been explained. I didn't expect this Cao Cao to be so arrogant." He thought he had already grasped the timing, but little did he know that this thief's temper was the most capricious. When the time came, God suddenly gave you an east wind, and then he set fire to burn your 200,000 troops completely. Zhang Tingzhi has tried his best to persuade, but it is still in vain. I will be locked up in death row right now. It's really useless, it's even harder to escape like this. In a dark and damp prison cell. Fuck, damn it, Cao Amon. I came to save you with good intentions, but you still beat me so many sticks. I'll have you pay back this debt sooner or later. Zhang Tingzhi was lying in the prison cell, with a layer of straw stacks on the ground. The occasional pains on his buttocks made him unable to resist taking a breath of cold air and cursing Cao Cao from time to time. At present, Cao Cao's attitude has shown that it is his determination to destroy the Sun and Lu families, and the Battle of Red Cliffs is definitely unstoppable. If left unchecked, then once this war begins, Cao Cao's side is definitely doomed to defeat, and he is also likely to die. Grass. He wants to unify the world, but what matters to him, Zhang Tingzhi? Zhang Ting was one of the travelers who finally arrived at the world of the 3 kingdoms, and had not had a chance to see the beautiful scenery of the 3 kingdoms. No, he can't just give up now. Since I can't persuade Cao Cao to withdraw his troops, do you think there are any other ways? Anyway, he is also a traveler with modern thinking, so how can he wait to die here? I'm sure we can come up with a compromise solution, Zhang Tingzhi murmured to himself as his brain raced. With Su Chu's intelligence, it is possible that he has already realized that he has seen him in the cabin. If Su Chu had told Cao Cao about his meeting with me, then with Cao Cao's suspicious personality, he would probably have 100% suspected himself of being a spy. The reason why he was not executed immediately today may be related to the hasty killing of Kai Mao and Zhang Yun a few days ago, which made Cao Cao more cautious. Even in a state of anger, he still chose to detain himself first. But why detain a small soldier of mine? This Cao Cao should see me again. While Zhang Tingzhi was brainstorming on his side, the sound of footsteps in the silent prison suddenly walked towards him. The person who came was actually Cao Cao's confidant, Su Chu, and 2 prison guards were following behind him. Su Chu, dressed in armor and holding a lunch box in his hand, approached and instructed the 2 prison guards, "Open the prison door." Upon hearing this, one of the prison guards stepped forward and quickly took out the key to open the cell. Then Su Chu walked in and his gaze fell on Zhang Tingzhi. Zhang Tingzhi's face was calm, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. The other party seemed to have known he would do the same. "Sir, this is a meal specially prepared for you." Su Chu placed his lunch box on the ground and spoke kindly. Without any affectation, Zhang Tingzhi reached out and took the lunch box. Upon opening it, he found that it was quite sumptuous, with a whole roasted chicken and some meat and drink inside. However, the wine tasted so bland that it was even worse than beer from a previous life. "Pooh, this dish is so unpleasant." Zhang Tingzhi took a bite and immediately vomited it. The taste of the food in front of him was more than 1 level worse than in his previous life, but by now he was already starving, so he couldn't control so much and just picked it up and ate it. Su Chu patiently waited for Zhang Tingzhi to finish his meal. After hesitating for a moment, Su Chu tentatively asked, "Sir, look. Is it the Prime Minister who wants to see me?" Zhang Tingzhi looked up and said lightly as he looked out the window of the prison cell. Upon hearing this, Su Chu's eyes narrowed slightly. The person in front of him couldn't help but know how to read his mind. Why did he calculate everything clearly, while being in front of him was like taking off his clothes? "Then let's go. What are you still doing here? Hurry up and lead the way." Zhang Tingzhi had already stood up from the ground, passed over Su Chu, and then turned his head to urge him. Upon hearing the sound, Su Chu regained his senses, took Zhang Tingzhi with him, and then walked out of the prison. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 5. Cao Cao has never been timid before a battle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Along the way, Zhang Tingzhi looked around, but his brain was thinking. What will happen if Cao Cao summons him late at night? During the day, Cao Cao had already rejected his proposal and summoned him alone at night. I'm afraid there's still a turning point, but he also needs to prepare a second plan. Just as Zhang Tingzhi was racking his brains to think, a cool breeze blew over the river. Perhaps Zhang Tingzhi was wearing too thin and couldn't resist sneezing, not to mention it was quite cold at night. Su Chu, who was leading the way ahead, stopped and spoke up to remind him, "Sir. This place is not as humid as the north. Many of my soldiers have contracted epidemics, so sir, please take care of your health." He actually looked down on this former soldier under his command in front of him. He was thinking of taking shortcuts, but the Prime Minister specifically instructed him to show respect to this person named Zhang Tingzhi all the way and not be negligent. He didn't understand. Although he had already informed the Prime Minister about the possibility of this person being a spy, he didn't expect the Prime Minister to still treat him politely when he heard about it. Wait a minute. Wet. Zhang Tingzhi's footsteps suddenly stopped, his eyes lit up, and his mind suddenly became clear. This sentence seems to have completely opened up his rigid and fixed thinking, and many of his past life's thoughts have been completely opened up. Su Chu approached Zhang Tingzhi and asked with a puzzled expression, "What's up, sir?" At this moment, Zhang Tingzhi felt particularly friendly when he saw anyone, even the black-faced General Su Chu in front of him became cute in his eyes. Zhang Tingzhi stepped forward and hugged Su Chu's shoulder, excitedly saying, "I have it. I have it. I don't have to die anymore. I don't have to die anymore." Su Chu furrowed his brow and reached for the sword at his waist. With a wary gaze, he scanned the surroundings and comforted, "Who is going to kill you? With me, he will never come back. If the Prime Minister asks her to protect this person, then he will definitely protect this person's safety." However, Zhang Tingzhi was ecstatic in his heart. He had thought of secretly escaping and even risking his life to advise Cao Cao. Even at the last moment, he was still thinking about how to make Cao Cao believe in him. "I never thought of relying on myself." The Battle of Red Cliffs was ridiculous, with Zhou Yu strategizing and Zhuge Liang devising clever strategies. What about him? What is there? What are the demands of Cao Cao in this great war? It must be fought. What is his demand? Live. Are the two not in conflict? Isn't Zhuge Liang going to launch a fire attack and borrow the east wind? Today, Zhang Tingzhi borrowed a rain from the heavens to extinguish his fire. A rain completely destroyed Zhou Yu and his plan, which satisfied Cao Cao's opportunity to fight. Indeed, there are some things that Cao Cao insists on trying before he realizes regret. Su Chu saw Zhang Tingzhi dancing and laughing foolishly all along. He couldn't help but tug at Zhang Tingzhi's hem and ask with concern, "Sir? Sir? Are you okay? If the Prime Minister cannot see this person, or if he is scared out of his wits on the way, then he is not a traitor to the Prime Minister." Zhang Tingzhi was in a great mood and regained his senses. He laughed a few times at Su Chu and exclaimed excitedly, "Ahaha! Heaven will not kill me. There's a way. Let's go. Go see the Prime Minister." Su Chu felt that Zhang Tingzhi was laughing and crying at times, so he probably had some kind of hysteria. This person's mind wouldn't have gone crazy, right? It doesn't matter to him. At this moment, in Cao Cao's tent, he was only wearing a single garment and pacing back and forth. Since he punished Zhang Tingzhi, his mind has become increasingly uneasy. A few days ago, he was just caught in Zhou Yu's plot to assassinate Kai Mao and Zhang Yun. Despite Zhang Tingzhi's 2 consecutive confrontations, he did not take any action, fearing that it was Zhou Yu's deadly plan. Sure enough, I quickly learned the whole story from Su Chu's mouth. This person named Zhang Tingzhi had a high chance of being a spy on Sun Lu's side, but why did he help himself? However, it is unclear what Zhang Tingzhi's purpose is. At least for now it seems that he is helping him. If 3 days later, there happens to be an east wind, and Huang actually drives a gunboat to surrender, then his army of over 200,000 will be finished, and in an instant, everything will be destroyed. Is it so naive to favor Sun Quan and Liu Bei? He didn't believe it in his heart, but with Zhang Tingzhi's reminder during the day, the more he thought about it, the more he felt scared. He is already preparing to send someone to set up a checkpoint in front of the camp to intercept Huang when he surrenders the day after tomorrow, in case of any unforeseen circumstances. However, even so, he still feels uneasy. Cao Cao thought of Zhang Tingzhi, who was imprisoned in death row. Since this person could guess that Huang was surrendering falsely, he might have other ideas. Thinking of this, he was somewhat grateful that he did not directly kill Zhang Tingzhi. Cao Cao regained his senses and looked up to see Zhang Tingzhi and Su Chu, who had just stepped into the camp. He immediately welcomed them and apologized, "Sir. During the day, I was in a hurry. Today, "Sir, I am willing to meet Cao Cao. It is my honor. Please take your seat." Zhang Tingzhi was also surprised by Cao Cao's enthusiasm and sat in his seat, knowing why, asking, "What is the reason why the Prime Minister came to see me?" Cao Cao hesitated for a moment and slowly spoke up, after much thought, "I still think that, sir, what you said makes sense. But why is sir so certain that there will be an east wind in 3 days? I have some knowledge of the celestial phenomena, and there should be a southeast wind in 3 days. Zhang Tingzhi smiled slightly. "What should I do in my opinion, sir?" Cao Cao asked stubbornly. Zhang Tingzhi said, "I still said that it's not appropriate to start a war at this time, withdraw the troops." Cao Cao's face looked grim, but he didn't react and said, "Sir, I know that I rose up in arms at the age of 20.8, fought in the south and north, and it took more than 20 years to pacify the north. Now that I am almost 50 years old, I am about to rule the world. I'm afraid I really won't wait for the next opportunity." His body has already started to decline, and he even gets a severe headache late at night. He knows exactly where his body has gone and probably can't wait anymore. Withdrawing troops is absolutely unacceptable. I, Cao Cao, have never had a precedent of being timid before a battle. Do you have any other way, sir? Cao Cao earnestly looked at Zhang Tingzhi. Zhang Tingzhi pretended to sigh and said, "I have fulfilled my obligation to remind you. Since the Prime Minister insists on going his own way, I have another way to help him." Half an hour later. Cao Cao was shocked and said, "How could this be done?" In just half an hour, it completely shattered his 3 views. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 6. Go to your camp first and discuss. You are listening at novel full.audio. Throughout history, those who can observe celestial phenomena and calculate solar terms have already been great talents, but the person in front of you tells you that they can change celestial phenomena and even control them. Absurdity, it's simply ridiculous. The will of heaven cannot be changed arbitrarily. Prime Minister, you can rest assured that as long as I can gather all the things I need, I will definitely be able to pray for a rain for Prime Minister, Zhang Tingzhi said respectfully. Cao Cao hesitated for a moment, his eyes narrowed slightly, and then he took a long breath and spoke to Su Chu, "Okay. Su Chu. You should do your best to assist Zhang Tingzhi from now on." He originally thought that Zhang Tingzhi would come up with some powerful opinions, but it seemed that he still looked up to this person and shamelessly said that he would rely on manpower to change the celestial phenomena. He naturally wouldn't believe it, but originally he just wanted to ask for peace of mind. As long as this person stays obediently in the military camp, he will naturally not make things difficult for Zhang Tingzhi. Su Chu did not refute either, but nodded and said, "No." Cao Cao spoke up and said, "As for the things you want, I will have someone immediately gather them for you. The things this person wants are not very valuable, so he can naturally afford them. However, he has not received any useful clues from Zhang Ting. He wants to gather Sun Yu and the others to discuss countermeasures in advance." Zhang Tingzhi and Su Chu walked out of Cao Cao's camp and exchanged a glance. Zhang Tingzhi spoke up, "Brother Su. Let's go. Let's go to your camp first and discuss the specific details." Su Chu didn't say much, so the two of them arrived at Su Chu's camp. This is much more spacious than Zhang Tingzhi's 5 people. He said to Su Chu, "This way. Give me a big pot, 3 kilograms of silver." Su Chu looked at Zhang Tingzhi with a surprised expression and asked, 3 kilograms of silver. "Okay. No problem." It was the first time he had seen someone call silver that way. Su Chu turned around and walked out of the camp. Zhang Tingzhi sat on the ground and began to ponder. His method is to use manpower to reach the level of rainfall. Artificial rainfall can be divided into cold cloud rainfall and warm cloud rainfall. Currently, it is winter and only cold cloud rainfall can be carried out. Firstly, a major prerequisite for artificial rainfall is to have sufficient cloud cover. Fortunately, now it is by the Chibi River, so there is no need to worry about the cloud cover. Zhang Tingzhi was originally prepared to use dry ice, but now there are no conditions for storing and making dry ice. He can only settle for second best, using silver iodide and then sending it to the sky to achieve artificial rainfall. The speed of using silver iodide to induce rain is also relatively fast, and the effect is significant. In my past life, most of them used rockets. Airplanes could shoot things high into the air, but like in today's Red Cliffs, these methods are not feasible. It's impossible for him alone to get airplanes and rockets. But soon Zhang Tingzhi had an idea: balloon fireworks. This method is also possible, using hydrogen balloons with silver iodide, floating in the sky, can achieve the conditions for rainfall in a short period of time. Now that the method has been determined, all we need to do is solve silver iodide. Silver is easy to solve, and there is silver everywhere. However, even if we know how to extract this iodine element ourselves, it is useless now that the two armies are about to go to war. It has to be said that Zhang Tingzhi really feels that what he said in school is very correct now. Learning mathematics, physics, and chemistry well, one is not afraid to travel around the world. Zhang Tingzhi thought that this head was getting bigger again, and Cao Cao didn't know if there was anything here that could extract iodine. He had crossed over and his brain had never rested for a moment. Now he had a chance to catch his breath, and he felt the fatigue on his body multiply. I can't stop it at all, my eyelids are almost closed. But suddenly a flash of fire flashed through his mind. There is not much time left for Zhang Tingzhi now, only 3 days. Zhang Tingzhi is going to make a decision on this rain. Soon, Su Chu arrived at the camp with a large pot and 2 soldiers. After seeing Su Chu, Zhang Tingzhi asked, "What kind of lobster is there?" "Ah. I haven't heard of it." "What about the sea fish?" "No. That shell." "I don't know." Zhang Tingzhi is really speechless. How could this guy ask 3 questions without knowing? There is abundant iodine in here, and he only needs to extract a little bit. 100 grams is enough for him to seek a rain. What about seaweed? Do you have it? Zhang Tingzhi continued without giving up. After careful consideration, Su Chu shook his head and said, "Seaweed. We do have it in the north, but there are also many troops here." Zhang Tingzhi's eyes lit up and he said, "Can you give me 30,000 kilograms? Seaweed does not contain a lot of iodine, but the quality is not good, so the quantity is sufficient." "How much? How could I raise so much for you? It only adds up to a few thousand pounds." Su Chu chuckled. Zhang Tingzhi sighed helplessly and said, "What about kelp?" "Kelp?" Su Chu frowned. Zhang Tingzhi saw that Su Chu didn't understand and explained in detail the appearance of kelp to Su Chu. "Ah. Isn't this worryFeilu?" Su Chu asked in confusion. Zhang Tingzhi said, "Do you recognize this thing? The Prime Minister likes to eat this the most on weekdays, and he confiscated a lot last year when he attacked Gongsun. Su Chu said. Zhang Tingzhi began to get excited and said, "How many?" "This kind of thing contains abundant iodine element, and it can extract enough iodine element from only 100 kilograms. I don't know exactly, but it probably weighs a few hundred pounds." Su Chu said. "All right. All right. All right. You bring him all over to me right away," Zhang Tingzhi said excitedly. Now that he had come to life together, as expected, heaven still favored him even more, and he began to solve it. Silver needs to be purified, iodine also needs to be extracted, and hydrogen gas and balloons are also needed. Each of these things is particularly complex. Firstly, it is the purification of silver. Zhang Tingzhi asked Su Chu to grind that pound of silver into powder, while he himself started using a large pot to grill and boil 30 kilograms of kelp over heat, squeezing out all the water. Su Chu is not inferior to a famous military general. 1 pound of silver was ground into powder in 2 days and nights. Zhang Tingzhi asked him to add some charcoal inside and start grilling over fire. The moisture in his kelp was almost roasted, so he burned it with fire to ashes, collected the ash, added distilled water, dissolved it, and soaked it to obtain a kelp suspension, which was filtered to obtain insoluble residue. Then, pure iodine element is extracted by distillation. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 7. Prime Minister, please. Come with us. You are listening at novelfull.audio. However, because the tools are not precise enough and may not be very pure, Su Chu's silver here has already been polished almost. Su Chu excitedly told Zhang Tingzhi, "Sir. You are truly a divine being. I feel like this silver is even brighter than before." At this time, the silver content was about 70%, and to extract pure silver, modern technology could not achieve it. After Su Chu's purification, the silver reached over 90%. In this way, the rate of reaction between silver and iodine will also accelerate. The preparation work for silver iodide is almost completed, and the rest is hydrogen gas and balloons. Zhang Tingzhi has already planned in advance that hydrogen gas is not easy to obtain, but other alternatives can be used, such as Kongmingdeng. Just bring the silver iodide to the upper clouds. The production of Kongming lanterns is relatively simple. Zhang Tingzhi asked Su Chu to prepare rice paper, iron wire, and liquor for him. The concentration of the wine is too low, further purification is needed, otherwise it will not meet the standards for combustion support. After finishing these days, it was already dawn. Su Chu also said he was a bit tired. He had almost become Zhang Tingzhi's assistant, and he needed to do everything. However, Su Chu saw the steps Zhang Tingzhi took, but he couldn't understand them. Now all the steps are ready, grinding the pure silver and finally obtaining about 1 pound of iodine. The two are mixed together and heated outside to improve the reaction rate. Now that Kongmingdeng's template has been made by Su Chu, he has prepared the alcohol and the rest is waiting for the generation of silver iodide. Everything is ready, except for silver iodide. Zhang Tingzhi breathed a sigh of relief, fearing that the Battle of Red Cliffs would begin tomorrow night. He had never rested well since crossing over, and now the steps for artificial rainfall have finally been completed. He could also breathe a long sigh of relief, and a sense of fatigue instantly hit, and his eyelids began to fight. Zhang Tingzhi shouted outside the tent, "Old Su. I'll take a nap, remember to call me when the things are ready." "No problem." Su Chu's thick voice echoed outside the door. "Sir. Sir. Wake up quickly." Su Chu patted the shoulder of Zhang Tingzhi, who was sleeping soundly on the bed, with some anxiety in his eyes. Now all the things that Zhang Tingzhi wanted have been rushed to make, but he doesn't understand the purpose of Zhang Tingzhi making so many lanterns. It's difficult to rely on that thing to get rain. Su Chu couldn't believe it from the bottom of his heart that these mundane things alone could change the celestial phenomena. This is simply outrageous. In fact, it's not just Su Chu who thinks this way. At this time, Cao Cao in the Middle Army camp also doesn't believe it at all. He is currently discussing with a group of generals such as Sun Yu about how to deal with Huang Gai's surrender if it's fake. Zhang Tingzhi was still eating KFC in his dream when he was shaken awake by Su Chu. He quickly regained consciousness, wiped his saliva from his mouth, and asked, "How's it going? How's it going? Are everything ready?" Su Chu nodded and said, "Sir. It's almost done. You can go and take a look now." Zhang Tingzhi suddenly remembered something, got up from bed, and went to the big pot in front of the tent window. He reached out and opened the lid of the pot in front of him, feeling very frustrated. Although his chemistry was good in his past life, it ultimately turned out to be just talk on paper, just like Cao Cao. When it came to practical experience, he was still a bit nervous. But in the pot at this moment, what caught the eye was a pile of pale yellow small stones. Su Chu, who was beside him, couldn't help but approach Zhang Tingzhi with such caution and doubt, saying, "Sir, with these yellow small stones, we can pray for rain." He actually doesn't trust Zhang Tingzhi from the bottom of his heart, but he has to listen to the Prime Minister's words. Zhang Tingzhi saw the stone in front of him, his hands trembling with excitement. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said, "It's done. It's done. It's done." As long as there is very little silver iodide, it can quickly react strongly with clouds, reaching the standard of rain. However, his technical means are limited, and the purity of silver iodide should not be good. But it can be made up by quantity. Su Chu looked at Zhang Tingzhi, who was very excited, and then turned his head to look at the stones in the pot. A big doubt flashed through his small eyes. "By the way, let's go. We're one last step away. Move everything into the tent." Zhang Tingzhi looked at Su Chu without paying attention to his confusion and ordered. Su Chu nodded, and in no time except for the tent, he walked in with dozens of soldiers holding things like lanterns. After Su Chu asked them to bring the things in, he let the soldiers leave. Zhang Tingzhi put enough alcohol to support combustion on the bottom of the already assembled Kongming lamp, and then tied a small amount of silver iodide to the tail end with a cotton rope. He prepared more than 500 Kongming lanterns in full due to concerns about insufficient quantity. After Zhang Tingzhi had prepared these 500, it was almost already dark. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and said to Su Chu, "I have already told you everything that needs to be told. When you see my signal, just light up the things." Su Chu was half believing and half doubting, but still nodded and withdrew from the camp. Zhang Tingzhi moved for a moment, his slightly swollen arms. Just as he was about to step out of the tent and breathe, 2 messenger soldiers entered the tent the next moment. 2 messenger soldiers exchanged a glance, and one of them said, "Your name is Zhang Tingzhi." Zhang Tingzhi frowned upon seeing the situation. Is it difficult for Cao Cao to change his mind suddenly again? This doesn't make sense. Yes. I am Zhang Tingzhi. Zhang Tingzhi hesitated for a moment before responding. He doesn't care about any changes on Cao Cao's side, he already has no way out. "Prime Minister, please come with us," said the messenger. Although Zhang Tingzhi was puzzled in his heart, he still followed the messenger. However, when he left, he did not forget to bring a prepared Kongming lamp, which was a signal agreed upon with Su Chu. The messenger saw that Zhang Tingzhi was not carrying a weapon, but only a sesame oil lamp. Although he did not understand, he did not say much. However, this time the messenger did not take him to the previous Chinese army camp, but instead took him to the highest observation post in the army. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. If I guess correctly in Chapter 8, the Prime Minister and Huang. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. At this moment, the lights on the top of the water fortress were brightly lit, and many generals gathered here from afar. Zhang Tingzhi followed closely with the signal of the messenger. I saw all the generals wearing armor and swords, their faces heavy and as if facing a great enemy, only Cao Cao remained lively and cheerful. Seeing such a scene, Zhang Tingzhi had already understood in his heart that tonight was probably the day Huang Gai had agreed to surrender. After seeing Zhang Ting, Cao Cao smiled and asked, "How are you preparing?" Zhang Tingzhi nodded slightly and said, "Basically, it's almost done." He had roughly guessed in his mind, and judging from this situation, it was likely that today was the date of surrender agreed upon with Huang Gai. As for why Cao Cao invited Zhang Tingzhi to come here, he is probably standing up to himself. Sun Yu glanced at the lantern in Zhang Tingzhi's hand and asked with some confusion, "Little brother. What are you doing with the sesame oil lamp in your hand? There's no need for lighting here." Upon hearing this, Cao Cao also had a puzzled expression on his face. He had just seen Zhang Tingzhi holding something resembling a sesame oil lamp in his hand, like a treasure, protecting it in his arms. Zhang Tingzhi did not answer, but spoke up, "If I guess correctly, the time of surrender agreed upon by the Prime Minister and Huang is tonight, right?" Although Cao Cao felt a little surprised in his heart, he didn't show it on the surface and said, "That's right. Tonight at midnight. I have set up a checkpoint to intercept in front of the water fortress, and I have also found people from the Imperial Observatory to observe the celestial phenomena. There is absolutely no possibility of a southeast wind tonight." Zhang Tingzhi smiled and did not immediately speak up. He was secretly roast that if he hadn't read the script of the Three Kingdoms in advance, someone else would have believed your story. Everyone present at this moment has a firm belief in their hearts, but if this war were to break out, most people would become cannon fodder, and even the water of the Yangtze River would be dyed red for the most part. Zhang Tingzhi secretly prayed in his heart that he had made so much preparation, hoping to successfully change the fate of his cannon fodder and prevent this tragedy. On the banks of the Chibi River, the Wu army is stationed. A young man with a dignified demeanor, holding a folding fan and wearing a phoenix-winged helmet, stood by the riverbank, his gaze fixed on the river, his eyebrows furrowed, and his face solemn, as if waiting for something. This person is Zhou Yu, who is famous in the Three Kingdoms, but at this moment, he is quite worried in his heart. Although Kong Ming has already issued a military order, he is still not at ease. This battle can be said to be about the future pattern of Dongwu for the next 20 years. If he wins, Dongwu will have no worries, and if he loses, Dongwu will be annihilated by the ashes. And he also saw Sun Tzu underground without words. A flat boat slowly approached the river, and an old general holding a sword approached the young man. He bent down and bowed slightly, respectfully saying, "Commander-in-Chief. It's almost time for the hour." On the Cao thief's side. "Wait a little longer." Although Zhou Yu was slightly worried in his heart, he spoke calmly on the surface. Huang Gai, however, was a bit anxious and couldn't help but complain, "Commander-in-Chief. That guy Kong Ming must be fooling us, right? He can really borrow Dongfeng. Who wouldn't know if Kong Ming had issued a military order during his time in the army, and whether this person truly possessed supernatural abilities?" Although Zhou Yu was reluctant to admit it, he already understood in his heart that Liu Bei, with the assistance of someone like Kong Ming, would surely become a major enemy of Eastern Wu in the future. However, it was not yet the time to turn his back. He still needs this ally, and the truth of losing lips and teeth is clear to 3-year-old children. Huang Gai saw that Zhou Yu was not in the slightest panic, and his heart couldn't help but become even more anxious. He paced back and forth on the side and had already found 50 small boats in advance. The boats were already filled with straw and fish oil, and by then, there would be dozens of blazing flames. But now everything is ready, except for the east wind. Zhou Yu's solemn expression suddenly brightened, and he reached out his hand to lightly caress in front of him. He chuckled and said, "The wind is rising. Kong Ming has indeed succeeded." Huang Gai had already noticed it and quickly turned around, bowing to Zhou Yu and saying, "Commander-in-Chief. Then I'll follow the plan." Zhou Yu nodded slightly, folded his fan, and said solemnly, "This battle. It's up to General Huang." Huang Gai's gaze firmly patted his chest, and he laughed boldly twice, excitedly saying, "Commander-in-Chief. Old Minister. We will fulfill our mission." Then he turned his head and boarded the small boat, heading towards the far side of the river. After watching Huang Gai leave, Zhou Yu's gaze withdrew from the river and turned to the other side of the seven-star terrace, with a hint of inexplicable meaning flashing in his eyes. If there were no accidents in this battle, Chao's army would not be afraid. In the future, Liu Bei will be his great enemy, and the situation of 3 parts of the world will be established. But he always felt a hint of unease in his heart, for some unknown reason. Zhou Yu thought for a while, comforting himself that he might have thought too much. Even if Cao Cao guessed that he would use fire to attack, he would never have imagined that the heavens would suddenly blow southeast winds, which was beyond the reach of human power. His gloomy thoughts improved a lot, and he turned around and returned to the military camp, preparing for the army to start operating according to its original deployment. The atmosphere in Cao Jun's water fortress was a bit low at this moment. Dozens of fast boats suddenly appeared on the river, each with a uniform blue dragon flag hanging from its bow. Standing on the watchtower, Cao Cao could clearly see that he should have been very happy. Once Huang surrendered, he could easily defeat the morale of the Sun Lu coalition army. When their morale was scattered, Cao Cao could easily defeat them, so as to completely unify the world. But now all of this has been changed by a soldier who broke into his camp a few days ago, and at this point, he also began to doubt whether Huang was sincere. At this moment, Zhang Tingzhi's palms were also sweating and his legs were slightly weak. He watched with his own eyes as the Battle of Red Cliffs was about to break out. It was false to say he wasn't nervous, as he had never seen such a scene before. Once an accident occurs, he will have to pay for his life. However, although Zhang Tingzhi felt a bit flustered in his heart, the thought of the various preparations he had made him feel much more at ease. After all, the power of science is something that will never go wrong. At this moment, Sun Yu was indifferent in his heart. He had just looked at the celestial phenomena, and Zhou Yu could not have been so foolish. Using fire to attack anything would only be a joke. However, the young soldier Zhang Tingzhi in front of him was so confident, which made him somewhat uncertain. He had already noticed that the Prime Minister was secretly praying at this moment, hoping that this matter was not true. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. It's just chapter 9. God doesn't help me. Life is out of season. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But heaven played a joke on Cao Cao, and the flames on the torch of the watchtower suddenly began to jump and quickly poured towards the west. Immediately, a fierce east wind struck from the river, gently caressing the people at the watchtower. After sensing the wind direction, Cao Cao took a few steps back and stumbled, almost falling. Fortunately, Sun Yu was quick-witted and helped Cao Cao, but he did not fall. Cao Cao regained his senses, swallowed a mouthful of water, and said stiffly, "Xuanyu. You. What kind of wind direction do you think this is?" His first reaction at this moment was that he must have felt wrong. How could there be a sudden easterly wind? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. God must be joking with me. Sun Yu had already felt in his heart that he was very clear about the Prime Minister's ambition, but now that the facts were established, negation had no effect at all. His tone was very certain and he said, "Report to the Prime Minister." "It's the east wind." Cao Cao struggled to beg Sun Yu, waved his hand, and vehemently denied, "It's okay. I'm already prepared. I don't even pay attention to the mere yellow cover. I don't even pay attention to it. Huang, how could you have the courage to deceive me? It's impossible. It's impossible." At this point, Huang small boat was less than 3 miles away from Cao Cao's side. Even if Cao Cao ordered to intercept it, it was already too late. It would take a long time for his orders to reach the lower-level soldiers. And Huang ship only took half a burning incense to leave the Cao army warship. Before he could finish his words, flames had already begun to rise on the ship on Huang side. At this point it was no longer important whether Huang had surrendered falsely. Their warship was considered abandoned, and the iron rope could not be dismantled for a moment. Dozens of fast boats, shining with flames, were about to crash towards the Cao army warship, Cao Cao suddenly reached out and grabbed Sun Yu's collar, questioning, "I have set up a checkpoint to intercept him. There must be no problem, there must be no mistake." "Right. Right." Sun Yu lowered his head and slowly said, "Prime Minister. There may be a turning point in this matter." At this moment, he was also comforting himself in his heart, perhaps Huang Gai had really come to surrender. And Cao Cao was very clear in his heart that once Huang Gai collided with his warship, with the help of the wind, his 200,000 strong army would be like fish and meat on the chopping board, to be slaughtered. He regretted it so much. Originally, Jesuo Yanzhou wanted to help his soldiers better adapt to the environment on the river, but he never expected it to cause such a big disaster. As a result, he no longer had the opportunity to rule the world. There are several fleets of Chao's army on the river, trying to establish a temporary defense line, but the yellow-covered ships ignite a raging fire, and the wind takes advantage of the fire, making it even more terrifying. It was easy to break through the Cao army fleet. Many fast boats, braving the flames, took advantage of the wind and crashed into Cao Cao's warships. As one fireboat after another broke through the defense line and collided with Cao Cao's warships, the flames instantly surged into the sky on Cao Cao's warships. Nearly 100 warships were all covered by the flames, and even the fierce flames illuminated most of the banks of the Red Cliff River. The soldiers of the Cao army died and were injured countless times, and the sleeping soldiers on the ship were choked by smoke and woke up. "It's gone overboard. It's gone overboard. Put out the fire quickly." For a moment, the formation of Chao's army was in chaos, and many soldiers began to want to escape. However, the flames on the ship had already surrounded them, leaving no way to escape. The raging fire was about to reach Cao Cao's side. "Kill!" A sound of fighting echoed from all sides of the Cao camp, and for a moment, the Cao army had no time to resist. Report. Prime Minister. Han Dang is leading his army to attack from the west gate of our army. Report. Prime Minister. The east gate has been missed. Report to the Prime Minister. Zhao Yun has already come in from behind. After hearing the news, Cao Cao stepped forward and kicked the messenger to the ground, angrily saying, "What are you eating? Hold on to me. Hold on to me. Dare to step back and kill me." He must not panic at this moment. This time, he has brought all his resources. He can't afford to lose, really can't afford to lose. You can't just lose like this. Sun Yu hesitated for a moment and said, "Prime Minister. Now that we are facing enemies everywhere, let's first avoid their sharpness. In the current situation, the defeat has been determined. As long as the Prime Minister is safe and sound, there is still a chance to make a comeback. Go. Where are you going? I, Cao Cao, fought for 28 years and unified the North. Now that I have all my family, I will soon be able to unify the world. Zhou Yu, Zhuge Liang, you are so scheming. So scheming. I'm not willing to accept it. I'm not willing to accept it. Heaven doesn't help me, Cao." Cao Cao was furious. He spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed backwards. "Prime Minister. Prime Minister." A group of generals quickly stepped forward to assist and protected Cao Cao in front of them. "Prime Minister. I am willing to cut the line here. Prime Minister, please leave first. We will definitely pave the way for the Prime Minister." Cao Cao struggled to get up from the ground and his gaze fell on Zhang Tingzhi's body. It seemed as if he suddenly remembered something, and his eyes lit up. He suddenly stood up and walked quickly to Zhang Tingzhi's body. One hand tightly grasped Zhang Tingzhi's hand, and his eyes were full of prayers, saying, "Sir. Sir. Didn't you say you could borrow rain? You start. You start." With a hint of pleading in his eyes, Zhang Tingzhi had become the only hope in Cao Cao's heart. Now that Cao Cao had truly reached a dead end, the defeat had been decided, and there was no other way. If heaven could bring the next sweet dew, then Cao Cao still has one more chance in this battle. He vividly remembered Zhang Tingzhi, who had promised himself that he would definitely seek rain. Now, Zhang Tingzhi, this small soldier, has become the only hope for Cao Cao and the only hope for the entire Cao army. Zhang Tingzhi glanced nervously at Cao Cao and swallowed a mouthful of the waterway, saying, "Prime Minister. Don't worry." He had never seen such a side of Cao Cao before and was also frightened for a moment. "Ha ha ha. How could I believe your nonsense? It's just that. Heaven won't help me. It's not the right time." Cao Cao laughed, but couldn't hide the despair in his eyes. "Prime Minister. I also have an advantage, which is that I never lie. I am fully prepared, and I can only wait for the Prime Minister's order before it rains," Zhang Tingzhi said solemnly. At this moment, a group of generals began to speak up and obstruct. "Vertical Sun. Stop talking nonsense, the enemy is about to break in. Prime Minister, you should leave first. The last general is willing to cut off the line for him. How could it suddenly rain at this moment? Now that the fire on our warships is unstoppable, stop talking nonsense. Prime Minister. Don't trust him. Sun, you couldn't help but speak up, Prime Minister. Your safety is even more important now. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 10. Heaven will not disadvantage me. Haha. Sir. You are listening at novel full.audio. He wouldn't pin his hopes on Zhang Tingzhi in his heart. Although this person is quite brave, how can this matter be played with? Once it fails, the Sun Lu coalition must have already surrounded this place without a chance to escape. The Prime Minister will inevitably become a turtle in a jar, and even if the Cao army is completely destroyed. Cao Cao stared fixedly at Zhang Tingzhi and suddenly spoke, "Shut up, everyone. This is my last hope." "I believe, sir. Let's start." At this moment, even if there was still a glimmer of hope, he would never give up. This was the closest time he had ever been to unifying the world. Cao Cao knew very well that if he gave up, he might never have a chance again. Others can wait, but he can't afford to wait anymore. Now Zhang Tingzhi has become Cao Cao's only hope. Zhang Tingzhi's gaze was firm, and he took out the Kongming lamp that was protecting him. Everyone's eyes were filled with confusion. Cao Cao also said anxiously, "No. Sir. What else do you need? Do you need a cooking jar? Do you want me to prepare it for you?" Zhang Tingzhi looked puzzled and said, "What kind of Dharma altar should I do? I speak science." "Ah. Science." Cao Cao was puzzled. He originally thought that Zhang Tingzhi might be doing something, praying to heaven or something. Zhang Tingzhi placed Kong Mingdang and then said to Cao Cao, "Prime Minister. Come on. Help me." At this moment, Cao Cao could no longer care about anything else and quickly came to Zhang Tingzhi's face, carefully reaching out to support something that looked like a sesame oil lamp in front of him. Zhang Tingzhi found a torch and ignited the fuel that had already been pre-poured with alcohol at the bottom. He then reached out to control the direction and said to Cao Cao, "No problem. Let go. Let go." Although Cao Cao was puzzled in his heart, he could no longer care about anything else and quickly let go. However, what he did not expect was that Zhang Tingzhi also quickly let go. I saw Kong Mingdang slowly rising and soon floating into the high sky. Cao Cao was somewhat puzzled and said, "Is that enough?" Zhang Tingzhi nodded and said, "Yes." Sun Yu spoke out in disbelief, "Is this really okay?" At this moment, a person in the crowd suddenly spoke up, "Look. What is in the sky?" At this moment, in every corner of the Cao army camp, there was a burning Kongming lantern slowly rising. Similarly, each rising lantern had a long cotton thread on its tail, which looked particularly bright in the black night sky. Look quickly. What is that? At this moment, Huang Gai also noticed the lantern-like things rising up in various parts of the Cao army's camp. However, at this point, he had already turned red-eyed and did not pay too much attention. He only remembered in his heart that he must not disappoint the Grand Inspector. Cao Cao had already issued several orders here, urging his army to swear to defend the camp to the death and never let the enemy invade. At this moment, Zhang Tingzhi was still calm and composed. Finally, Cao Cao couldn't help but ask, "Sir, how long will it take for it to rain?" But before he could fully utter these words, soon raindrops fell on Cao Cao's face. Cao Cao reached out and caressed it, confirming that it was a raindrop. Suddenly, he smiled and said, "Haha. Heaven does not harm me. Haha. Sir. You are truly a divine person." At this moment, Su Chu also rushed over and saluted the Prime Minister, saying, "Prime Minister. Are you okay?" Cao Cao was already laughing so hard that he couldn't close his mouth and asked, "Did you let go of the things in the sky just now?" Su Chulian hurriedly said, "Prime Minister. That was the signal that the gentleman had shown me in advance, and he had released a total of 500. At this moment, he was completely shocked by Zhang Tingzhi. Unexpectedly, the few small lanterns made by Zhang Tingzhi, since they could truly bring rain, were a blessing for the Cao army. Cao Cao looked at Zhang Tingzhi, and the more he looked at him, the more he liked him. With such great talent, why did he worry about not being able to dominate the world? This person's talent is probably 10 times higher than Zhuge Liang's. I thought it was just bragging, but I didn't expect to have such skills. After the end of this battle, he will make this person his own strategist." Sun Yu watched as the raindrops grew bigger and bigger, and the turbulent waves in his heart were no less than those of Cao Cao. There were indeed hidden dragons and crouching tigers everywhere. With such talent, the power on the Prime Minister's side would surely be more stable. Next, I will personally go to battle. Let's advance and retreat together, we will win this battle, we will not retreat in death. Cao Cao's eyes narrowed slightly, and he suddenly drew his long sword from his waist, with the blade pointing straight at the sky, exuding a majestic aura. This battle is sure to win, we will never retreat in a desperate battle. This battle is sure to win, we will never retreat in a desperate battle. A group of generals also began to raise their arms and shout in response, and for a while, their morale was greatly boosted. Cao Cao joined the front lines of the two armies with a group of generals. Before leaving, he specifically instructed Su Chu to protect Zhang Tingzhi's safety and provided him with 500 swords and axes. Zhang Tingzhi watched as the rain in the sky grew heavier and heavier, and the fire on the battleship ahead had almost extinguished. In fact, he was quite satisfied with the intensity of the rain, after all, it did not disappoint him. Now that the fire has been brought under control, coupled with the fact that Cao Cao personally raided the formation, his safety in this battle can be temporarily safeguarded. As soon as he sat down in the tent, Su Chu's gaze towards Zhang Tingzhi was completely different. He never expected that this person, who had an average appearance, would have such skills. He had really underestimated him before. Su Chu actually really wanted to go to battle and kill the enemy, but now he has witnessed Zhang Tingzhi's abilities firsthand. He was impressed and fully understood the importance of Zhang Tingzhi, so he did not complain at all. On the other side of the formation, the Cao army, which had been devastated by the fire, sensed the heavy rain in the sky and began to counterattack step by step, establishing an effective defensive formation. Although many soldiers were injured during the fire attack just now. But more often than not, they were intimidated by the fire attack. They still had the combat power they should have had, after all, they had been trained for a period of time and were on a stable warship. Now that the fire had been extinguished, the morale of the Cao army was strong and gradually stabilized its decline. Therefore, for a time, it was difficult for the Sun Lu coalition to attack the Cao army's camp. At this point, Huang Gai had already sensed something was wrong. Originally, the army's attack was going smoothly, but it didn't take long. At first, many sesame oil lamps floated up in the sky. Although this object may seem strange, it does not have any attack effect. He did see it, but he didn't take it seriously at all. He thought it was just a new method of transmission by the Cao army, but he didn't expect that before the sesame oil lamp flew up high for a while, heavy rain began to fall here. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th.